This is Jared Horak for today's RacingDigest.com, and for this week's Today's Racing Digest video, since we had the Breeders' Cup Championships last weekend, and we have a slow graded stakes weekend across the country, I'm going to look back at the 2019 Breeders' Cup and look at some horses to watch and horses that we can bet in future races. And I'm going to start with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Now in that race, I'm going to follow the winner, Structor, for trainer Chad Brown. Looked good. He had a good inner post. He sat off the pace. He sat a great trip, and he ran his record to a perfect 3 for 3, winning the Juvenile Turf nicely. The reason that I want to follow this one is it's interesting that they want to try to switch from turf to dirt and put him on the Triple Crown Trail for 2020. So we'll have to see how he handles the main track. His sire, Palace Malice, more than ready, the dam sire. So he's got some pedigree to handle the main track, and let's see how he can do on the road to the 2020 Derby. And he's one that could still be your 2-year-old champion, because the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was a big upset, and now there's really no leader in the division. We still have the Remsen Stakes, the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes, the Grade 1 Los Alamitos Futurity. So we still have some races in the 2-year-old male division that could decide the title, but at this point Structor has a good chance to be a finalist and possibly your 2-year-old champion at this point. Now the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, nothing wrong with the winner. British Idiom set off the pace. The pace was honest, saved ground, and was able to rally and get Donna Veloce in the late going. But the two horses I want to follow are your second and third place finishers. Donna Veloce, that was one from my Breeders' Cup video for the digest. I said she was definitely worth playing, even though she had that one lifetime start at 6.5 furlongs. So she was going from 6.5 furlongs to 8.5 furlongs. Her first start against winners, first start around 2 turns, first start in the stakes ranks. She had a lot to overcome. She set the perfect stalking trip. She got the first run. She took the lead and then lost by a neck. British Idiom just ran her down. She was more experienced. She had already had a Grade 1 around 2 turns in the Alcibiades, and she won that one. So right now, British Idiom's going to be your 2-year-old filly champion, but Donna Veloce definitely ran a big race here. She has a lot of potential to be good. We still don't know how far she wants to go. Maybe she'll be better sprinting. We don't know that yet, but that was a promising effort in her second career start to almost win the Juvenile Fillies. Now Bast for trainer Bob Baffert was third, and I picked Bast on top in this race because I thought the pace was going to be contested, and I thought that Bast was actually going to sit the trip that Donna Veloce did. But Bast ended up dueling on the lead, putting away the other 2 speed horses, and then Donna Veloce and British Idiom got by her, but she didn't quit. She just kept on trying all the way to the end, missed by less than 2 lengths. It was a strong effort for her, considering she probably wants to come from a bit off the pace. Now she's another one, just like Donna Veloce. I don't know the distance yet. She was a Grade 1 winner in the Del Mar debutante at 7 furlongs when she broke her maiden, and then in her last 2 stake starts around 2 turns, she hasn't been as good. She did win the Grade 1 Chandelier by a neck, and then she was third in the Juvenile Filly. So don't know what her distance is going to be yet, but she ran a quality race at Santa Anita in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, the horse that I want to follow out of there, selflessly for trainer Chad Brown. She was out in post 13. She was hung out wide throughout. She was just never able to get any kind of trip there, and she ended up finishing 5th in that full field. That was not a bad effort at all. The post position was really her undoing, and that happens a lot. You get these Breeders' Cup races, 14 horse fields, post position, trip, and the ride by the jockey. Those were the key ingredients to a lot of the winners in these races, but selflessly we just was not able to work out any kind of trip from a bad post, and she ended up running an okay race. So she's got talent. She's still lightly raced, and she's one I want to follow heading into next year. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile turned out to be a very disappointing event. You had Dennis's Moment, your big favorite. He stumbled badly at the start, so that blew his chance to win the race. And then you had 8 Rings. Basically, after Dennis's Moment was eliminated, 8 Rings was the other horse taking money. Everybody else was a nice price, but 8 Rings wasn't able to take advantage of that, and he wasn't able to get to the front. And those 2 horses you just can't trust either of them. They're both 2 for 4 lifetime. They both threw the rider in one of their starts, and they both threw in some clunkers, and they just can't be trusted. Dennis's Moment's a Grade 3 winner. 8 Rings is a Grade 1 winner. Maybe next year they can bounce back. Out of those 2, probably Dennis's Moment, looking at the pedigree and everything else, looks like maybe he could go on. But just really hard to trust him at this point. You just don't know what versions are going to show up. He has that trouble with the start. Like I said, he's thrown the rider. He stumbled badly at the start. So he has some issues with the start, and that's not good heading into next year. So hopefully he'll be a bit more professional as a 3-year-old. For 8 rings, I think he's a need to lead type. If he can get out there and set the pace, he's interesting. But otherwise, I don't think there's only one way he can beat you, is to get out there and control the pace. And when everything doesn't go right, he doesn't win. Now, Storm the Court was your upset winner, but after the 2 favorites had their problems, that was it. I mean, anything could have happened, and Storm the Court ran a good race to win it, but he beat Anu Daour, and that one was second, and that one had only run one time, just like Donna Veloce I mentioned in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. In the Juvenile, Anu Daour only ran once, a 1-mile maiden race at Golden Gate Fields, so he had a lot of inexperience. But of course, having the 2 favorites have their issues certainly opened this race up, and it didn't seem like a strong edition of the Juvenile this year. It was run faster than the Juvenile Fillies, but I think that there are still those quality runners in the Juvenile Fillies, and I think maybe the Juvenile Turf Structor was the most impressive male in the Juvenile ranks in those races. Let's jump over to now for the Breeders' Cup Saturday program. The Turf Sprint, I liked Eddie Haskell there, and he just had a miserable trip. From post 10, I thought he was going to track the pace, and he was tracking the pace, but then he got shuffled back, and then he got shuffled back again. So he'd had just a miserable trip. 5 furlongs, if you're having trouble, you're getting shuffled a couple times, you can forget it. There's just no time to bounce back. So Eddie Haskell, other than that race, was always right there at 5 furlongs. And heading forward into his upcoming Turf Sprint starts in Southern California, he's one I certainly want to follow. He's much better than he showed in that Turf Sprint. In the Dirt Mile, the horse I want to follow out of there, Omaha Beach, spun to run, was able to just get out there and control the pace, and it looked like that kind of race where if you could get out and be close to the pace on or near the lead, you were going to be successful. And Omaha Beach figured to be up there, but he just didn't. He didn't have the best break. Mike Smith just had him too far back. He was 6 to 8 lengths back. You could forget it. At that point, Spun to Run had controlled the pace up front. Omaha Beach was too far back. In his other starts, he showed tactical speed. Even against Chancelot at 6 furlongs, he showed tactical speed, and that is one of the fastest sprinters in the country. So he just lost his position. He lost the race when he was 7 or 8 lengths back, and then he rallied to finish a clear second. He's going to run in the Grade 1 Malibu Stakes at Santa Anita on opening day, December 26th, and then he's probably going to wrap up his career in the Pegasus World Cup at Gulfstream Park in January, and then he's off to stud after that. So he's going to probably have 2 more starts. He's got much better tactical speed than he showed in his last start, and I would expect that he's going to probably show that positional speed in the Malibu Stakes in December. The next one we're going to talk about is the Filly and Mare Turf. There's a horse I want to follow because she's moving to the Chad Brown barn. Villa Marina was an overseas runner, loved 1.25 miles, didn't run her best race at Santa Anita. That was her distance, but the field was strung out. The pace was fairly quick, and she just was able to run 7th. She didn't run a big race there. But now she's going to move to the Chad Brown barn, and she's going to start her career again and have a career in North America now. And she's won in these longer distance turf races. She's got some talent, and I would expect that she's going to run much better for Chad Brown in her upcoming starts. In the Breeders' Cup Mile, another one for Chad Brown, Without Approval. Now in this race, it looked like it was a 2-horse race on paper between Got Stormy and Uni. Uni won it, Got Stormy was second, but Without Parole, one that showed some ability in 2018 and earlier on, and then went off form, then moved from overseas to the Chad Brown barn, came off of a layoff, first start in a while here, ran a big race to finish 3rd, was able to grab 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Now this is one that's going to probably show up in the Pegasus World Cup Turf on the Pegasus World Cup undercard. And Bricks and Mortar won that one for Chad Brown last year. So now I think he's going to go Without Parole for that race next year. And that's one that I would expect much improved effort here. And then it's shown that back class, has shown a lot of ability in the past. I think that this one in North America is certainly one to keep an eye on. The Breeders' Cup Distaff, another one here that just didn't have the great trip. Midnight Bisou was the big favorite. Now Blue Prize somehow from post 11 was able to work out a better trip than Midnight Bisou from post 4, even though Midnight Bisou under Mike Smith had running style versatility, was ahead of Blue Prize earlier on in the race, and then fell back and then rallied. Blue Prize just got a better ride from post 11 and just was able to get the jump on Midnight Bisou. Midnight Bisou finished a clear second. Heading into this race, she was 7 for 7. She was a candidate for Horse of the Year. She's still going to win the Older Filly and Mare Award, Eclipse Award. So now next, what they're looking for is the $20 million Saudi Cup. That's in Saudi Arabia on February 29th at 1 1/8 miles. And she's going to train at Fairgrounds this winter to prepare for that race. So they're going to try to go for the big spot there. We'll see how she ends up doing in that race. But Midnight Bisou finished better than appears second in the distaff. In the Breeders' Cup Turf, if you watched my digest video, I gave out 9 horses worth betting on Breeders' Cup Saturday. United in the Breeders' Cup Turf went off at 50 to 1, and that was the horse that I said was worth betting. I didn't expect him to win. I said, obviously Bricks and Mortar, Anthony Van Dyke, Old Persian, those horses were certainly the horses to beat, but United was just as good as any other U.S. runner. Lightly raced 4-year-old gelding. Richard Mandela has always done good work in the Breeders' Cup. Flavien Prat was the rider, best turf rider in Southern California. United had that tactical speed, had run well in both graded turf routes. This was the longest race that he had, but at 50 to 1, he was just as good as any other U.S. runner, and he almost pulled off the upset. Missed by a head. Bricks and Mortar won it, and now they're going to go for the Hollywood Turf Cup next on November 29th at Del Mar at 1.5 miles. Now, I don't know what kind of odds he's really going to offer in that race, but he ran big. This wasn't a fluke. I said he was as good as any other U.S. runners other than Bricks and Mortar, and he almost pulled off a huge upset. And United's one that seems to be getting better, and he's worth following. But again, he's not going to be 50 to 1 in the Hollywood Turf Cup. I can guarantee that. Now, the Breeders' Cup Classic will be the final race, and the final horse that I'm going to watch is McKinzie. And I was expecting McKinzie to perform well. I wasn't expecting him to win at 1.25 miles, not his best distance. But he ran a good race, and Joe Rosario gave him the right ride. This is how he wants to be ridden. He wants to be up on the pace, tracking the pace. He wasn't able to get that trip in Awesome Again. He was wrangled back. He wanted to be up on the pace. And now this time they switched to Joao Rosario from Mike Smith, and McKinzie was able to run his race. That's the best that he could do. He was up on the pace. He got the first run, but Vino Rosso just had more stamina than him, and he was able to win it. But McKinzie finished a good second. Some of the races they're looking at for McKinzie next year, he will be coming back. The Saudi Cup, as I mentioned, Midnight Bisou could go there, and then the Dubai World Cup. So those 2 races in 2020 are early targets for McKinzie. He's won 7 furlongs, 1 mile, 1 1/16 miles, 1 1/8 miles. He's really tough. You get him past that, it's a little bit beyond his comfort zone, but he's a classy horse. He always finishes first or second. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, make some comments on some of the horses to watch that you think had maybe some better, could run better in their upcoming starts out of the Breeders' Cup. I'm going to be coming back next week and in the weeks ahead, and we're going to be doing some stakes races, but since we had this slower week, it was good to look back at some of these races. I have my written recap of all the Breeders' Cup races at todaysracingdigest.com. You can also read my Kentucky Derby 2020 and my Kentucky Oaks 2020 blogs at todaysracingdigest.com. And that will wrap up this week's video. I'll be back next week with another stakes race from around the country.